Hi students. In earlier classes we were introduced to asexual and sexual reproduction. Now you need to know the difference between the male and female reproductive parts and study human reproduction in detail. Humans are unisexual. Viviparous. Meaning that these organisms produce live babies from their bodies rather than eggs, and they are sexually reproducing organisms. At the period of puberty, the reproductive events in humans start with the formation of gametes, or gametogenesis, where sperms are produced in males and ovum is produced in females. This is followed by insemination, where the sperms transfer through the female genital tract, thus leading to fusion of male and female gametes called fertilization. That leads to the formation of zygote.
Hello and greetings everybody. Welcome back to my biology class. Today we're going to talk about the role of hormones in menstrual cycle. Children often get confused because there is an interplay of 4 hormones in the cycle. These 4 hormones are: first, the follicle stimulating hormone, which is FSH. Second is the luteinizing hormone, called as the LH. Third is estrogen, and fourth is progesterone. And if we abbreviate them, it turns out to be FLOP. F-L-O-P. FLOP. Together, these 4 hormones are responsible for regulation of the menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle, we all know, is of 28 days duration. It consists of 2 phases. First one is called as the follicular phase. It is so called because the ovum or the egg develops inside the follicles of the ovary. It is of 14 days duration. The second one is called as the luteal phase, as the corpus luteum develops during this phase and secretes progesterone. The menstrual cycle begins at the age of 14 years, which is puberty, and it is called as menarche. The menstrual cycle continues every month till a woman reaches the age of 50 or 55, and then it stops at the stage what is called as menopause. This menstrual cycle, which is of a duration of 28 days, has 2 phases. First one is called as the follicular phase, as during this stage the ovarian follicles develop. This follicular phase is of duration of 14 days. On the 14th day, the ovulation takes place. After ovulation, the second phase begins. This phase is called as the luteal phase. During this stage, the corpus luteum continues to produce progesterone. Very often, the menstrual phase may be long, a standard length of 14 days. So, people having a shorter menstrual cycle may have a shorter follicular phase and a longer luteal phase. And people having a longer menstrual cycle will have a longer follicular phase, but the luteal phase will continue to be of 14 days duration. So let us identify the key organs which are responsible for the menstrual cycle and its regulation. First and foremost is the hypothalamus, which is present in the middle of the brain, and it produces the gonadotropin releasing hormone. Second is the pituitary gland, which is also called as the master endocrine gland. It consists of an anterior lobe and a posterior lobe. Now, let's look at the pelvic organs of the female reproductive system. They consist of vagina or the birth canal, the uterus or the womb, the fallopian tubes or the ducts, and the ovaries. Ovaries are the primary sex organs which produce the ovum. The ovum is collected by the fimbriae of the fallopian tubes, and the ovum travels through the fallopian tubes into the uterus, and where it gets implanted. Ovaries are called as the primary sex organs because they produce the female gamete called as the ovum. The ovum released by the ovary during ovulation is captured by fimbriae of fallopian tube. The ovum travels down the fallopian tubes into the uterus. The uterus provides the most conducive atmosphere for the fertilized ovum to get implanted. It consists of a soft, cushiony endometrium lining. This endometrium is highly vascular and glandular because it is made up of a large number of capillaries and thick mucus gland. This endometrium lining is the one which is shed off during the menstrual flow. Let's see how the menstrual cycle begins. On the first day, the hypothalamus starts producing gonadotropin releasing hormone. Its function is primarily to stimulate the anterior pituitary gland to produce FSH and LH. FSH, as the name suggests, is the follicle stimulating hormone. It stimulates the ovaries to develop the follicles. The primordial follicles or the primary follicles present in the ovary develop into a mature follicle or the Graafian follicle under the influence of follicle stimulating hormone. The primary follicles present in the ovary mature into Graafian follicle under the influence of FSH. The gonadotropin releasing hormone also stimulates the anterior pituitary to produce LH or the luteinizing hormone. The luteinizing hormone is responsible for causing the release of ovum from the ovaries, which is called as ovulation. Each ovary consists of a finite number of primordial follicles. This number is fixed at the time of birth of a human female, and it does not increase thereafter. There are about 200,000 follicles per ovary. A fixed number of follicles develop and mature into a Graafian follicle during each menstrual cycle. As the primary follicle develops into a secondary follicle, then the tertiary follicle, and then matures into a Graafian follicle, the number of granulosa cells around the oocyte continue to increase in number. These granulosa cells are the ones which are responsible for secretion of estrogen. Soon after the ovulation, the next phase of the menstrual cycle or the luteal cycle begins. The ruptured Graafian follicle now gets converted into corpus luteum. This corpus luteum produces the other major female reproductive hormone called as the progesterone. Progesterone is, like estrogen, a steroid sex hormone. This progesterone is also called as the pregnancy hormone, as it is responsible for maintaining pregnancy in case the egg or the ovum released gets fertilized. This progesterone is responsible for maintaining thick endometrium lining. In case the egg gets fertilized and gets implanted in the uterus, the placenta takes over the role of the secretion of progesterone for the rest of the pregnancy. The duration of the pregnancy in case of human reproductive system is 280 days, which is called as the gestation period. This placenta continues to secrete not only progesterone but a host of other hormones. And one of the most important hormones secreted by placenta is human chorionic gonadotropin hormone, or HCG. This HCG is a hormone which is only produced by the placenta. Therefore, it is used as a pregnancy indicator in the pregnancy test. This HCG not only produces progesterone but also the decline in the progesterone level and the removal of negative feedback from hypothalamus as well as anterior pituitary causes the secretion of FSH, and this causes the beginning of the first period or the beginning of the first phase of the menstrual cycle, when the inner layer of the endometrium separates from the basal layer of the endometrium and collects in the uterus. This sloughing off of the endometrium layer, which consists of blood capillaries and mucus glands, moves through the cervix and comes out of the vagina in the form of blood thickened with mucus. This blood and mucus is called as the menstrual flow, which normally remains from 5 to 8 days in a normal menstrual period. The degenerated endometrial lining, consisting of thick capillaries as well as mucus. Now let us talk about the changes in the levels of hormone in both the follicular phase as well as the luteal phase. Let's look at the graph of 4 hormones during the follicular phase. The follicular phase began with the secretion of gonadotropin releasing hormone, which caused the release of FSH. So the FSH starts increasing from day 1 until it reaches a peak near the 14th day and dips just before ovulation. The LH does not have any role in the follicular phase. As a result, the rising levels of FSH stimulate the ovaries to produce estrogen. So the level of estrogen continues to rise from first day to the 14th day unless it reaches the 14th day where ovulation has to take place. So it dips just before the ovulation. The LH primarily does not have a role in the first phase, but it spikes just at the time of ovulation on the 14th day. So we see an LH surge and an FSH surge on the 14th day. The progesterone has absolutely no role to play during the follicular phase. As a result, we continue to see very low levels of estrogen during the first 14 days. On the 14th day, ovulation takes place under the influence of high levels of LH and FSH. After the 14th day, the luteal phase begins. In the luteal phase, the progesterone level continues to rise as well as the estrogen level also is seen to be rising unless the corpus luteum degenerates. And as the corpus luteum degenerates, the progesterone level falls. The fall in the progesterone level has a negative feedback removal on the levels of FSH and LH. As the progesterone level declines, it removes the support for the endometrium lining. And now the endometrium lining is shed off and causes the menstrual flow. Secondly, this decline in the level of progesterone also removes the negative feedback on the FSH and LH production. Now the FSH production begins all over again and the follicular phase starts all over again, and the cycle continues thereon.